Thank you, Oree.
You're
So Oree now is going to be speaking with Indira Allegra.
Nice to meet you. Cool, it's nice to meet you. So unfortunately, I have not met most of the artists that are showcasing at this event, you being one of them. So I had to do a little bit of research, and I've been so busy that I didn't get to do too much, but I definitely will follow up with a lot more after this.
It's all good.
But I was checking out your work, and what came at me more than anything else, or at least upon first looking at it, was that it was very geometric. And I was mentioning how I'm a painter and I work with a lot of geometry. But with this installation that I have here, I did take into consideration geometric patterns when I laid it out. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel that there's any significance to representing artwork in an abstract form that allows people to take in the art a lot easier, or maybe not? Like maybe it's harder to take it in, and therefore it's more effective because they get to think about it more. Can you talk about that?
Sure, yeah, it's a good question. So when I think about someone who walks into a situation wherein they're presented with content that's abstracted, one of the things that happens is that there are many layers of information that one needs to work through in order to actually approach the work, right? So it's not, it may not tell you something on the first glance. And I think with Blackout in particular, that was important to me in order to think about the time scale that we need to approximate when we're mourning something, you know? So to actually have an experience of viewing work that's slowed down. In terms of the use of geometry, what you're actually looking at is what's called a drawdown. So I'm a weaver, that's part of my training, and one of the tools that I use as a weaver is to take grid paper and to draw out the patterns in that way. So the dark areas are places where the warp threads are visible and the warp threads run up and down. And the light areas are places where the weft threads are visible and the weft threads run from left to right. And the actual pattern of the cloth that you're looking at there is the pattern that's used to make many police uniforms. It's a twill. And a twill is a go-to because it washes blood stains out easily. And a twill is a go-to because it keeps the crease in the pant leg even as the officer exerts him or herself. And that was something that I always found haunting when looking at footage of police brutality and in my own experience, and witnessing police brutality against members of my own family, how freshly pressed they looked the whole time. So it became necessary for me to investigate the nature of that cloth and to understand a little bit more about the narratives encoded in that cloth. And to think about that cloth, the actual structure of it as a redactive device, right? So you see that there, the scrolling text are excerpts from families who have lost loved ones to police violence. And as we try to access that text, it's obstructed literally by this larger structure, you know, the structure of that clothes, the police state.
Cool. I also saw that you incorporated text into these designs, and I think I read that they're statements from eyewitnesses of
from
police.
Actual families who have lost loved ones to police violence, yeah.
How did you acquire all that information?
The interwebs,
okay.
Yes. I think that this is also thinking about our mourning process that is the part of it that the internet has taken up for us, right? Because it's like I think we all know that when we have lost someone who is close to us or seen something horrible happen, that the grief spills out of our bodies. We can't really fully or neatly contain the expanse of that emotion. And so I think that one of the ways that the internet is kind of functioning right now for us is that it holds, in a different form, it holds a lot of that grief, that spillover. So, when we think about our social media feeds that are constantly scanning and scrolling, I feel like that is I think of that as thread. Those are, narrative threads that are literally creating the cloth of our grief, of our mourning in another form. So you're in another space.
Okay. So I'm gonna base my next question off of the list that I got.
Awesome.
Okay. The first one, I guess. How did you become involved in civic engagement, social activism, movement building activism?
Okay. I think what I'll say first is that I don't believe that there's such a thing as an apolitical space. So there's no way for me to have not been involved because we're all born into political space. So I think the way that I can best answer that is to maybe I can speak more specifically to ways in which I have expressed the political nature of the space that I was born into. But I think like many of us, I was certainly raised in a household where we talked a lot about labor, and we talked a lot about capitalism even. Mine was not the house that you came over as a kid. I went over to other people's houses to play. No one wanted to watch documentaries at my house. It just really wasn't, really wasn't happening. So, walking picket lines with my mom and caring for homeless folks who lived in our community. And, it's not exotic stuff. I think it's just kind of if there's someone in your neighborhood who needs help, or a friend of the family who's in a bad relationship and needs to get out, and you have a couch, then you put one and one together and you know what you should do. So I think for me, I feel like it's an everyday thing. Activism is it's a domestic thing. It could be a digital thing. It's whatever, you make of it, but it's your sensibility of already being born into political space. And in our gallery is a political space. And the BART is a political space. And there's nothing extraordinary about that. It already is. So that's how I feel about it.
Cool, nice. I guess this might end up being my last question. So how is your work meaningful for you? I hope that's not a hard question.
No, it's okay. How's my work meaningful for me? It helps me to metabolize grief. I think anything that helps to draw connections between, stories that may be closer to me or my family and other family stories, that's helpful. Anything that activates empathy is helpful. That's kind of like a language that we're not very fluent in, that we struggle with, I think, as a whole in society. And so being able to find ways to practice empathy is ongoing. So.
Okay, all right, well, there's still time left. So you grew up in Oakland?
No, I was born in Detroit, and then in the 80s when the crack cocaine epidemic hit or was introduced by the feds, or however you want to think about it, my mom got a job transfer and we moved to Portland, Oregon, and it is as weird as it is portrayed on TV. That's all I'm actually at liberty to say.
Okay, well, thank you.